So good morning, everybody. My name is Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt. I'm a medical doctor. I practice both in Europe and in Washington State in the US. Welcome to our meeting today. We're in England, and I was asked to introduce the audience, there's just a few doctors here, to the correct use of the biologically clean products that I use for most of my work. It's a company in Seattle that has designed their products according to my lectures. I have to say I'm not financially involved with the company, but I like the products. Yeah, so this is BioPure's.com is the website, and I will take you through the products and why we're using them. So at first, a little introduction. I believe the field of alternative medicine or integrative medicine is at a dangerous slope to go wrong by losing the focus of what really is important. And in my daily work with patients, we've come to know that really almost all the chronic illnesses that we're facing right now, that's the neurological illnesses, Parkinson, MS, Lyme disease, but also especially the illness of childhood, autism, learning disorders, hyperactivity, brain tumors, are all linked to one single factor, and that is the pollution of our environment. And it's important to know that our body is always in an osmotic, balanced exchange with the environment. And so when the environment gets toxic, we get toxic. And as the body accumulates toxins, we lose control over the microbes that are settling in our body. And so we're facing a whole new host of illnesses caused by parasites and by microbes. And so I want to start with detoxification of what we do and what we've learned that really works. So before anybody should engage in any detox program, the most vulnerable organ in the whole chain of events when we detox the body is the kidneys. The nephrons, the cells of the kidney, are here for life, just like the brain cells. They don't get replaced every 3 days like the inner lining of the gut, and they need to be protected from damage when we engage on detoxification. So here's what we do. So the first part of protecting the kidney is to route the toxins away from the kidneys into the gut. You know, the gut has a filtrating surface of about 2 tennis courts. The kidneys have a filtrating surface of about a ping pong table. And so the damage would be much, much higher if you put a highly oxidative toxin through the kidney membrane than putting it through the larger surface of the gut. And so step number one, and I did a study on this at the University of Tübingen in Germany in the mid-1990s that was published, where we could show when we give a patient a certain type of chlorella, the chlorella will extract from the blood a whole host of toxins that then do not go through the kidney. So we can basically clean up the kidneys by routing the dirt into the gut rather than letting it run through the kidneys, by giving the patient a good whack, a good dose of chlorella. And the chlorella that I advise people to take, it's first of all, it has to be in a light sealed package. You know, this is a metallized bag that not only protects it from light, but also protects it from electromagnetic radiation, which all the products are vulnerable to. And the key piece in chlorella is a membrane that is absorbing virtually every toxic substance known to mankind. And so when it's tolerated, and that's about 90% of all people, it's the ideal way of extracting toxins from the bloodstream, routing it into the poop, and excreting it that way. So that's number one. Number two, there is a number of other products, and I like to go down the line with them. Chlorella is a green algae, and it's a freshwater algae. We also use a brown algae that's number 2 in the literature for binding toxins, and it's called Eclonia cava. This comes in a little bottle like this. It's in capsules with a brown algae in it. It has the same metal binding effects that Chlorella has, just a tiny bit less, a little bit different spectrum of what it binds. It has a very pleasant side effect. There was a study done on men in terms of erectile dysfunction, and it had a better effect in the study than the current medicines that are often prescribed for it. So this is just a side effect that most people appreciate. And also, it can induce deep delta sleep. So we use it a lot in people that have trouble sleeping at night to give them 4 to 6 capsules at bedtime to induce deeper sleep. Then the next product in line is this one here. It's a form of green clay. Just briefly to the history of clay. When the Spanish invaded Mexico and murdered everybody pretty much, a few of the Native American tribes that lived there escaped up to the high mountains. And there was very, very little food. And one of the major food sources there were different cacti that actually had a toxin in them that would kill people. And so what they discovered, if they eat some of the dirt that is next to the cactus along with it, they could actually extract the nutrients from the cactus without being affected by the toxin. And that earth is this green clay. And clay has been found to be very, very potent in binding biotoxins, neurotoxins that are either plant-based or based by molds and bacteria that produce them in the gut. For example, Clostridium difficile, C. diff, produces a couple of very potent biotoxins, and they can be neutralized with a green clay. So, the dosing with all of these things is, of course, something we test out in the office. But a good dose with the clay is a flat teaspoon twice a day with a little bit of water in between meals. And we use that in a context of mold and yeast toxicity instead of cholestyramine. And we use it in a whole host of other circumstances. For me, that's more like an acute remedy that I may give for 3 weeks or 6 weeks. It's not something I would give ongoing, but in the moments of crisis, it's a fantastic tool. The next tool that we use has the name Zeobind, and I could lecture for 2 days on zeolite. Most zeolites that are in use are toxic and are not recommended. The main zeolite researcher is a German professor at the University of Cologne, and he investigated all the zeolites across the planet and found one that has exceptional properties in binding toxic metals and binding organophosphates, insecticides, pesticides, dyes, drug residues, and so forth. And that is the zeolite. Zeolite comes with one drawback, and that is zeolite, chemically speaking, is aluminum silicate. And when it hits the stomach acid, a small amount of aluminum is liberated, even with the best zeolite. And it's been found that there are certain plants that can completely bind the aluminum that's liberated. And we encouraged BioPure to put that in here, and it is in here. That's a form of horsetail that is added to the zeolite that prevents, first of all, the aluminum from escaping, but beyond that, it actually binds more aluminum from the body, so it extracts aluminum from the bloodstream and can be used for aluminum detox as well as a detox of pretty much everything else. So this form of zeolite is, from what I know about the literature, clearly the way to go. And It's a universal binding agent, and like all binders, they should be given away from food. And there is a measuring spoon in there. The average dose is one of those twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day. In acute situations when a patient goes through what we call a detox crisis, they've done too much. They've done whatever body work, psychological work. They had a couple of DMPS shots. They've taken glutathione, and suddenly their system is overwhelmed with the onslaught of mobilized toxic stuff that it can't get out. Then we may go much higher with the dose. I may use a teaspoon 4 times a day, which is about as high as you ever want to go. Then the next binder that is very specific is called metal sweep. There's actually 2 of the same. One is called microsilica, comes in a small glass vial with a measuring spoon that measures out 100 milligrams. Microsilica is a compound made of microscopic silica spheres that are spiked. Attached to those spheres are sulfhydryl groups. And this is by far the most effective binder for sulfhydryl affinitive metals that have been mobilized. And just to go over those, that's lead, cadmium, barium, nickel, mercury. It's pretty much everything except iron and aluminum. Those are the ones not bound by it. And this is a fantastic tool in the context of mercury detox. It's the most powerful binder if somebody had just their amalgam fillings removed and there's been some material that has escaped. This can be taken orally and swished around in the mouth and held there for 20 minutes and then spat out, as it after an amalgam removal will absorb all the mobilized mercury. But it can also be swished around and swallowed, so it's an ideal tool. Metal sweep is simply the combination of this with vitamin C. When we want a more prolonged effect along the entire gut, it is best to combine it with vitamin C. So this is pretty much the list of the binders that we're using. So when we engage on a detox journey, we want to first line the entire gut with binders. So when we then start a detox process that triggers the release of, let's say, aluminum or mercury from the brain, that stuff has to go somewhere. It has to be sucked out of the system. And this is through the binders. This is the way that first of all protects the kidneys, but it also is a necessary last step of the detox program. And the last step should be in any detox program the first step, because if you don't have binders on board and you're stirring up, you're shaking the tree and you're mobilizing cadmium, nickel and all sorts of things, all you will achieve is a redistribution of metals, usually to a worse place than where they were before. By having the binders on board first, that is the safety blanket. We enhance that by doing regular colonics or enema therapy along with it. Now, the second part is a more specific protection of the kidneys. Most of our patients are chronically ill, have pre-damaged kidneys, and we want to liberate the kidneys. And so I take you through that. So the main healing remedy for the kidneys is water. But what water? Okay, the ideal water is glacial runoff. We can, here in Washington State, we can go up to the glacier and actually get that. But it's a lot of work. And so we're trying to create water that has all the healing properties of good spring water or good water, ideal from glacial runoff because it's full of silica. And as you will hear me mention later, the main toxicity that we are facing right now in this day and age is aluminum from man-made sources, partly from the fallout from the artificial cloud seeding. And so we need a lot of silica to get the aluminum out, and silica-rich water is the treatment for it. But we take a more synthetic approach, so we encourage the patient to get a good RO filter, or use distilled water or use a good charcoal filter. The problem here in this country is the fluoride. Fluoride is not easily removed with charcoal filtration. It's a very small molecule. It is said to come best out with reverse osmosis. I'm not totally convinced that that's true, but I leave that part here. And then when we have reasonably clean water, then we're adding the things in that are missing in water. The first thing that we're adding in is electrolyte. There's a liquid electrolyte that has originally been produced by a wonderful shaman who worked in Spokane, Washington, who did wonderful healing work with electrolyte, and that's his original recipe. And so what we do, we ask the patient to make a quart of water and then adding in enough of the liquid electrolyte until the patient can detect the taste, a slightly salty, pleasant taste. When people travel, there is a powdered electrolyte that serves the same purpose. My preference is the liquid one when people are at home, but it's not always appropriate when you take a 3-week vacation or you travel a lot like I do. You can travel with liquids, you use the powder. But in the same way that you add enough powder until you just can detect the taste. Then the next step, what you want to add in is minerals. And so BioPure has a nanonized micromineral formula done by a physicist in Texas who figured out a way of nanonizing. That means creating microparticles of minerals that slip right into the cells and give the water incredible healing properties. We work with this, especially in our autistic children, with great results. And so the microminerals, for a quart of water, I like to add 1 to 2 tablespoons of microminerals to that. Then the next part for healing the kidneys is this one here. This is called in America wild garlic or bear garlic. It's really a different plant from garlic. This grows on the side of little creeks in the woods, mostly on the East Coast so far. It's a European plant that just started its migration over here. So on the East Coast it's available. And it's the leaf that's actually harvested, and only in March or April when it first comes out before it blossoms. And when that is tincturized, it means made into a tincture, it has the same exact healing properties as garlic. The taste is not appreciated by everybody. It's a very strong garlicky taste. It's a liquid. And so when we want to heal the kidneys, this rules. This is wonderful. It's a pipette full 3 to 4 times a day. That doesn't take a lot, and that has a tendency to clear metal residues and toxic residues, the gunk, out of the kidneys. We've been using this in Germany in my group there for the last 30 years. So by the way, I've been in medical practice now 40 years. I've been doing this work for about 30 or 35 years, so we have quite a considerable amount of experience. And the specs on the wild garlic look fantastic. The amount of allicin that it converts to when it's prepared is phenomenal, and the other plant ingredients that are in there are phenomenal healers for the kidney. There's one more item I like to insert here for protecting the kidneys. It's a sugar called galactose. The main galactose researcher is a professor at a medical school in Berlin. That's sort of my hometown, the Charité, Werner Reuter. And he did the leading studies that shows that this sugar galactose has a phenomenal healing effect in autoimmune disease of the kidneys. This is the nephrotic syndrome that children get, but it's also the strep-related glomerulonephritis. And the theory I don't have time to go into, but it's easy to Google and read up on galactose and autoimmunity of the kidneys. Well, why do I bring that up in a context of detoxing the patient? When toxins are hung up, get stuck in a nephron, in a kidney cell, that kidney cell is marked to the immune system for extinction. You know, the immune system, that the cells of the immune system that kind of patrol the area when they detect the toxin in the nephron, that mark the nephron as foreign rather than part of the body, and the immune system starts to attack the cells. This research you can read up on the website of Vera Stejskol. It's melisa.org. She's the main European toxicologist who basically clarified that all autoimmune diseases are caused by a haptene, a substance attaching to the cell, and the substance is foreign, and then the immune system recognizing the cell, the entire cell is foreign, and attacking it and destroying it. And galactose tunes up our system to make it more intelligent. It's also a sugar that is absorbed into the mitochondria without requiring insulin, without pushing up insulin, causing all the insulin-related problems. And so the second use for the galactose is all the mitochondrial disorders. I do not understand why that is not known in this country. You know, we're still hovering around the ribose that never worked very well, and other sugars and other ways of treating mitochondrial disorders. But in Europe, the rest of the world, it's galactose. It's a teaspoon a few times a day. It dramatically improves many mitochondrial disorders. And in the context of metal detox, we use it because there often is a subtle component of autoimmune damage to the kidneys that we do want to prevent and heal right from the start. So this is a little bit on the binders and the kidney protection. And now we actually starting to look at how to detox the system, how to trigger cells and tissues to release toxins that they've stored. Yeah, we know Alzheimer's disease has 4 components. You know, it's got mercury in the brain cells, aluminum in the brain cells, it's got Lyme spirochetes, and it's got herpes simplex type 1. And when we address those 4 issues, we can very often reverse, at least halt the illness. And so, to get the mercury out of the brain, which of course is sort of the main intent really of all the detox programs, is to get mercury and aluminum out of the brain. Because if you can get it out of the brain is the last part that gives it up. When you get to the brain, or you get the mercury and the aluminum out, you've detoxed the entire body. Because you can't, when the whole body is full of aluminum and mercury, and there's a little bit in the brain that causes Alzheimer's disease, you can't get it out if there's such a big amount here. You're working against an osmotic gradient that's impossible. So we need to detox the whole system. And in order to achieve that, we need some things that trigger the cells to give up their content of mercury and aluminum. And of course, in this country, in the US, you know, what's emphasized is the injection of glutathione. It's giving the glutathione precursors, N-acetylcysteine, glycine, and so forth. And those strategies never worked really very well, I have to say. And so we've gone another way and oriented ourselves more along the literature in Japan and from other cultures. So the leading researcher for me is Dr. Yoshiaki Omura, who is actually a Japanese trained physician, but he lives in New York. And he did some wonderful studies to show that by giving fairly moderate doses of cilantro, you can trigger the brain from giving up metals very rapidly and very dramatically. And his study included mercury, lead, and aluminum. In a mouse model, he could show that he could halve the amount of aluminum and lead in the bones and in the brain of an animal in 39 days, even though the animal was being poisoned every day with those substances. So that's incredible. Against the osmotic gradient of further toxicity, cilantro was able to clean up the body. And then we have a German neurologist who repeated the study, basically found the same thing, that cilantro very selectively depletes the central nervous system of all the toxic metals. And so it's just a question of what cilantro. Is it all cilantro? No. There's certain growth methods of cilantro that enhance that effect. And that cilantro, I don't know if you have it here, yeah, that comes in a bottle like this. And some people only tolerate in the beginning a few drops a few times a day, but the dose that I like to use is 2 pipettes full, 2 dropperfuls, 3 times a day, ideally before meals, because also as a side effect it turns on the digestive juices. And then some clever scientists at MIT developed a way of nanonizing cilantro, making it so it can slip into the cells at larger amounts. And he combined it with a few other nanonized plants, and that became the Matrix Metal Spray. It's a phenomenal tool, especially for the children, to pull that mercury, aluminum out of their brains in a very, very safe way. And the adult dose is 8 sprays twice a day. Yeah, and in children, maybe 2 sprays once or twice a day. So it becomes a very cost-effective tool. This is sort of like a magical tool that is largely overlooked by a lot of my colleagues and not used enough. And then the last item that I like to stress here for actually turning on the cells to release mercury and lead and other metals is curcumin. And curcumin, we've heard a lot about, everybody talks about its cancer healing properties, and it's now like I don't know how many thousands papers are out now on curcumin, but the important thing is curcumin is very poorly absorbed. There needs to be a certain amount of black pepper that comes with it, and a certain preparation of black pepper which is in here in this product. And I encouraged BioPure to put ginger in with it, because curcumin is a fantastic antiparasitic. In the literature, in the world literature, ginger is by far the most overlooked and yet most potent natural antiparasitic, and it dramatically enhances the absorption of curcumin in the gut. So we put these 3 things together. It's a fantastic product. The curcumin, we like it to be used together with oils or fats. It'd be great if it can be taken together with a teaspoon of coconut oil, which we like. Coconut oil is a medium chain triglyceride that's great to nurture the mitochondria. And recent literature shows that the curcumin, when it's actually absorbed properly, like this one is huge in actually triggering the cells to release lead and mercury back from the cells. And so we're using it in the context of metal detox, not so much in the context of the cancer work that other people are using it in. So this is now, let me repeat, so the first step in detoxing a system is to bring binders on board that make the colon and the small intestine the organ through which the toxins are filtered, not the kidneys. And we have to protect the kidneys, and only then do we start to trigger the release of metals, which we do with those 3 things. And now there is an in-between step. How do we get the toxins that are released from the cell shuttled through the connective tissue into the bloodstream and then to the blood vessels that circulate through the small intestine to exchange it out there? And that needs an in-between step, and that can only be done with the sulfhydryl containing amino acids. And athletes use different whey products that are quite good. Whey contains a quite high number of sulfhydryl containing amino acids. The branch chain amino acids are helpful with the transport, but we are using chlorella as our main main agent. And I kind of want to take you through the chlorella products that have become so effective in not only decreasing mercury in the system and lead, but also organophosphates, dyes, food preservatives, the wood preservatives, PBDEs, dioxin, and so forth. And so I like to take you through this. So in children, the most effective way of doing this is CGF. CGF stands for chlorella growth factor, and it's called that because in the 1950s there was a study done in China that shows when people take this heat extract of chlorella that concentrates the peptides that are in it, the children grow taller, they look better, they have no tooth decay compared to the control group that they have. And they have absolute beautiful development of the dental arches, which is so crippled now in the population so often. So that is chlorella growth factor, and this is also used in other parts of the world as a very potent anti-cancer agent in the oncology context. This is a liquid, and the more the better. So when we have children with autism or with neurodevelopmental defects, we could easily use a whole bottle a day. It's basically tastes like chicken broth, but it has incredible healing properties with it. So whatever people can afford in the context of children, this reigns. Out of all the products that BioPure has, the liquid chlorella growth factor is the healer of children and gives them the possibility of expressing their genetic potential to the best. With all the influences that we have now, the electrosmog, the toxins, they're all tweaking our epigenomic regulation of the DNA, and this can tweak it back. A partner product to that is CVE, chlorella vulgaris extract. It's basically prepared the same way, but the base for this is chlorella vulgaris, and it's a peptide concentrate of it. The CGF is a peptide concentrate of chlorella purinadosa. Then the next item that we like to have on board, it's either whey product or chlorella vulgaris. Chlorella vulgaris has a weaker cell membrane compared to chlorella purinadosa, and because of the weaker membrane, it's absorbed much better, and the content of this becomes available. It's found in the bloodstream and in the matrix, in the connective tissue. Chlorella purinadosa, this one, shines because it has this hugely absorbing cell membrane that absorbs all the crap that's in us, but as a nutrient it's less bioavailable. Chlorella vulgaris doesn't bind that much. It does bind lead, there's a good study on that, but it's not as effective in binding toxins, but is fantastic as a shuttle agent for the toxins from the cell wall into the bloodstream. That it does beautiful. But the binder in the gut is the other chlorella. So I usually put people on both chlorellas, both serving a different purpose. This being basically the ideal amino acid supplement. I like to say something to that. So chlorella, 50% of the weight of chlorella is amino acids, and it's almost identical to the composition of breast milk. It is the ideal amino acid supplement. People are always trying to produce artificial products that are coming on the market now, how to tweak our amino acids, how to nurture our system with amino acids. There's nothing that will come close to this. This is how nature has actually provided us with it. It also contains a lot of fatty acids, omega-3, omega-6, omega-9. It contains a lot of minerals, virtually the whole spectrum of B vitamins, including methyl B12. It's the only plant product I know that has methyl B12 in it, and it's fantastic. So just to go through the list, we also have a electrolyte broken chlorella. So now if you want to get deep into the system with the detox effects of chlorella, the chlorelite, by soaking chlorella basically in electrolyte, it electrolytically breaks osmotically it breaks the cell wall apart, and all the content of the chlorella is released into this fluid. And the content contains all these peptides, all these cytokine regulating agents, and many immune stimulating and immune modulating factors. And so this, we believe, goes all the way into the cell. And it's, you know, if I only would give one detox agent to a person, you know, if I have a grown-up who says I can only take one thing, please don't bother me with the whole host of other things, I would give this one. It's the least tasty of all the chlorella products, but it's the one that goes the deepest in, and because it's not all the membranes are dissolved, it still contains enough membranes to serve as a binder. A lot of it is absorbed, the amino acids, the peptides are released into the system, and there is some nanoparticles in there that go all the way into the cell. So then we have CGF chlorella, that's just simply a mix of chlorella that's enriched with the chlorella growth factor. And it's a wonderful product. This is a wonderful product for adults. You know, it's a bit more expensive than chlorella, but you get the concentrate of the peptides in it. And so if somebody is recovering from a chronic illness, this is quicker in rebooting the system and beefing it up. Now the other shuttle agent, you have to remember we're talking about, we trigger the release of the toxins with the matrix metal spray or the curcumin. Metals are kind of moving through the tissues, and we want to bind them and bring them to the emunctories, the exit organs. The other one is the freeze-dried garlic. You know, freeze-dried garlic contains dozens of sulfur compounds that are hugely helpful in attaching to the sulf-hydroaffinitive metals. The cadmium, nickel, barium, mercury, and it can greatly enhance the transport of those toxins to the exit organs. And largely we use the freeze-dried garlic as an antimicrobial agent, but it has a welcome side effect of being a huge detoxifier for virtually everything toxic in our system. So I think, let me summarize up in terms of the detox process. We sort of have to start the thing backwards. You know, we want to, you know, detox the brain. The toxins have to run through the tissues and eventually end up either in the kidneys or in the gut, and they have to come out. In order to facilitate that, we start on the far end and line the gut with agents that can bind whatever's mobilized, so it doesn't get recirculated. So we start with the binders, then we need the agents that clear the blood or bring substances that are in the blood to the exit organs. That is the intermediate things that I just mentioned, largely chlorella and garlic. And then we need the things that actually trigger the release of metals from the brain. And you know, even homeopathy counts here. Your homeopathic mercury and related compounds can be very powerful in triggering release of metals, but they're stirring up the pot without getting the stuff out. And so my favorite is the matrix metal spray and the cilantro, their combination to trigger the release of metals. You know, and so when we adhere to that, we will get a steady release of toxins, certainly get more toxins coming out than go in on a daily basis. And I will later on mention how we detox aluminum. That's a little bit different, not substantially, it just requires 2 or 3 extra items. Cilantro is a very strong mobilizer for aluminum, but there is a couple of extra things we need to consider with aluminum. And then the detox of organophosphates, which is really has become our main enemy in the country. We're talking about glyphosate, you know, Monsanto's Roundup, atrazine from Syngenta. There's different products from DuPont. It's basically the way we do agriculture and people do their gardens has poisoned our entire food chain. and our bodies, and we need to get the stuff out. So we're going to take a little break, we will take a little pause, and then we go into that. So I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the darker things of our time. We've been using a special, very aggressive detox method in Germany called apheresis. It's a treatment similar to dialysis, where the entire volume of the blood is taken out from one arm, put through a filter system and put back into the other arm. It's about a 3-hour procedure. And what we discovered there is that pretty much every American that we sent there is full to the ceiling with nanonized aluminum and with organophosphates, Roundup being the #1 place. And the interesting thing is there isn't a single lab in the US who can make this diagnosis. Why that is, I don't want to discuss here. It's not my place to judge that, but it doesn't, the aluminum toxicity didn't show up in the hair analysis. It did not show up in the different challenge tests that we do. But it's every one of our patients is now way over 100, has been dramatically toxic with aluminum. And just to give you a number, so on average, the aluminum amount in the blood, the toxic aluminum amount, is by the factor of more than 100 times higher than lead or mercury or cadmium or the other things that are discussed in our literature. And it's very clear that the source of the aluminum is the weather modification program that has been sprayed on the skies by planes with the intent to cool down the planet. But what goes up must come down, and we're inhaling it. Lung diseases are hugely on the increase in spite of the stopping of smoking because of it. And so we looked into that, how to get the stuff out. And there was a strange synergism between Roundup, the main ingredient is glyphosate, and aluminum. And as it turns out, Roundup acts as a chelator for minerals. So when we exposed to eating non-organic food, the Roundup that's sprayed on it binds the trace minerals of this very food and prevents it from being absorbed. So most of us get trace mineral deficient over time, even when we eat organic. It's always like, well, there is no such thing as really truly organic and clean because the air moves, the rain moves, everything kind of gets mingled up. And so Roundup has the unfortunate property when it binds with aluminum, it transports the aluminum deep into the brain and the central nervous system. This is not my research, this is more serious people than me that found that. And so what I want to focus on is that we cannot differentiate that detoxing a patient for aluminum and detoxing from Roundup, they go together. And so we looked in the literature, there's been a lot published about organophosphates, Roundup being one of them, or glyphosate being one of them. And I take you through that. So the things in the German literature is the humic acid from the lakes and high mountains, the moors, the black stuff in there that's full of humic acid and fulvic acid. And a concentrate of that is this product called matrix minerals. And that has been found to be very, very effective in clearing Roundup from the human body. That's published, it's not my idea. And so the second thing that is true for all organophosphates is there are certain plant adaptogens that are found in certain berries that are very, very effective in turning on the enzymes that clear the stuff from our system. And amongst those are acai, it's a berry from Brazil. Plums, the western plum is high in antioxidants that achieve this target. Pomegranate is in there, and the last kid on the block is the vitamin C from rosehip, is set in some research papers over 200 times more effective as a bioactive vitamin C as ascorbic acid. And so we put those two things together. One product is called Deep Purple, that contains the pomegranate, the plums, and the acai, and then the rosehip with this incredible cocktail of plant adaptogens that clear the stuff. And so our detox for Roundup is these three things. These two things make a pleasant smoothie, good tasting, at least for me, good tasting. The matrix minerals, it's about 1 ounce to 2 ounces a day. It's very easy to take, doesn't taste nasty. And then when we go to the aluminum, there's two things that stand out. Well, there's several things that clear aluminum from the body. One is simply citric acid, lemon juice. Make a water bottle, put a lemon in there, and drink it throughout the day. That does clear some aluminum from the system. But the most effective clearly is the cilantro. And so I mentioned it before, 2 dropperful 3 times a day of cilantro tincture goes a long way. BioPure has an electrolyte enhanced wild-crafted cilantro, which is my preferred product for this. But the taste, again, for children, they take better to the pure alcoholic tincture, which is this big bottle here. So it's citric acid, it's cilantro, and then the main ingredient that is listed in all the research papers is silica, and the main source of silica, of bioavailable small particle-sized silica that can go after the aluminum in the body, is in horsetail tea. And so I know BioPure will carry a horsetail tea that don't currently carry it, but it's fairly easy to find in the health food stores or to Google to source it on the internet. I do not recommend to take any of the synthetic silica products that are on the market right now. They simply don't work. They don't go after the aluminum in the system. And so this combination of cilantro, silica from horsetail tea, those 2 powders, and the matrix minerals really addresses this fundamental issue that is killing all of us. We're all being poisoned with this stuff, and so this is the way out of it. And however, in order to make this work, we still need the binders on board. The main binder for glyphosate is the zeolite that I mentioned before. And so when we keep that all in mind, that these things work together, then we can get wonderful, wonderful results. There's a few tweaks that I forgot to mention before. One, if you want lead, we know from the published anthropological research that the lead content in our long bones now is between 400 and 1,000 times higher than it was 200 years ago. That's a huge increase of lead. And lead, certainly, I don't know why it's not discussed, but it's the main cause of osteoporosis, is that simply the lead storage in the bones, it just shuts down the osteoblast, the new formation of new bone, and slowly, we're shrinking because of it. And to get the lead out of the bone is not that easy, and we found by giving a high dose of zinc in a certain cocktail, we can push out the lead and replace it with zinc. That is the mechanism that works. And BioPure has a product called Core. I will mention it later in some other context. Core has a synergistic cocktail of other things with it that make the zinc work very powerfully and deeply. And so when we want to focus on lead detox, we give a high amount of the Core. So between 4 and 16 capsules a day, and we can hugely trigger the release of lead. We just need to stand then by and make sure that we're covering the system to shuttle the lead all the way out with the approach that I mentioned before. Another item that we like to add in, this little box here is called Phytocord. These are three items put together. They have a huge anti-inflammatory effect. The main one of them is a type of boswellia, frankincense. When we move toxins backwards through the system, and the toxins are from their storage places detached and move now through the blood vessels, they tend to have a huge inflammatory effect. And so what is in the literature, garlic prevents that. Yeah, I mentioned that before. The other one is vitamin E. And the third one are the three things that are in here, Boswellia being the main one. Yeah, and so when we embarking on a detox phase in our patient's treatment, I always put this anti-inflammatory on board. It's just one capsule twice a day. That's enough to prevent all the disasters that I hear every day that happen to other people. And maybe last but not least, something I like to mention is the DEO. DEO stands for deodorant. This is a cilantro-based deodorant that friends of us here in Seattle have created. And by using this on the skin, it actually extracts toxic material through the skin out. And I didn't think of it much in the beginning, but then we tried it out on some of the early breast cancers and some of the women that had like really severe congestion in their breasts with dramatic results. Just applying it twice a day under the arm, it extracts in reverse the stuff that migrated in. We know that the aluminum from the deodorants have been found in breast tissue, but also the parabens. And the DEO is designed to pull that backwards out of the system. Once women wake up that they've poisoned their bodies for 30, 40 years, and it's still time to save their breasts, this is a wonderful tool. But we also use it in the groin, we also use it on the face, we also use it on the front of the neck for thyroid disorders. Wherever with our method where we can diagnose toxicity in the tissue, we can transdermally pull out a certain amount of toxins through this. It's a very amazingly effective tool. It's inexpensive and it works. So I think this part of the discussion I like to leave here, and we take a little pause again. So for my colleagues here, I'd like to now talk a little bit about one of the other factors that is so compromising our health, and that's the electrosmog, the combined effect of the radiation from cell phone broadcasting, radar, the ambient electromagnetic fields at home, radar, the tetra field that's used by the police and fire services and so forth. The cumulative effect of the radiation is now so strong that it has become a factor in everybody's health. And whether people know that they're electrosensitive or not, we all are affected by it. About 25% of the population kind of notice when they get in a strong field that they feel unwell. But animal studies have shown whether you feel unwell or not, it triggers DNA strand breaks, it's carcinogenic as a combined effect. It impairs the functioning of the blood-brain barrier and many other things, and we need protection from it. And so we looked in the literature, and I like to take you through what I recommend, and it has been hugely successful for large groups of population, making this part of the daily routine. So first of all, in terms of the internal, this is now, we recommend people switch off the fuses at night. They use the Stetzer filters, these are condensers during the daytime to clean up the electromagnetic environment. We recommend nobody to have wireless technologies in the home. We want people to go back to broadband or to fiber optic networks, like intelligent people would do anyway. And you minimize the use of the cell phone. That's just sort of on the side. But beyond that, people need protection. And so we all recommend to our patients to wear radioprotective underwear. Basically, they come nicely packed now. They're very professionally done. This is cloth that is silver coated. And what it does, it creates a Faraday cage around the body. Metal works like a mirror towards cell phone radiation. So cell phone radiation that is broadcast to you from the next cell phone tower comes in and destroys the DNA in our cells and many other aspects of it. Many proteins get distorted. There's wonderful research on this out now. And by simply wearing radioprotective underwear, we're deflecting those waves and minimizing the impact of it. And I feel it is a necessary part of health for everybody alive. With a few exceptions, if you live in a valley on the Rocky Mountains, where there's absolutely no cell phone reception, you don't need this, but everybody else needs it. So we have underwear, t-shirts, long johns, whatever, that's for me has become a huge part of the health regime that we recommend to our patients, especially to the children. Children cannot defend themselves. The radiation that comes in mutates our cells, it changes who we are. So then there is internal protection that we can create with certain herbal compounds, and there's two that are really shining. The one that's most published is an extract of propolis called CAPE. The PE for word CAPE stands for phenyl ester. That is a substance that crosses the blood-brain barrier and mimics all the effects that melatonin is doing. It is very few physicians even today know that melatonin is a primary antioxidant that the central nervous system is using. It's a primary mercury detox agent that the brain is using. It's not glutathione. It's not alpha-lipoic acid. Our literature is so full of things that don't work, but this is in the literature that does work. When you take oral melatonin, it's a peptide hormone. It does not cross the blood-brain barrier. You cannot get into the brain with melatonin by taking melatonin orally. You can protect the rest of the body, but not the brain. However, if you take propolis extract, it does cross the blood-brain barrier and does achieve that effect to restore deep healing sleep. It detoxes the brain over time. It pulls out all the crap that we have in there, prevents Alzheimer's disease, brain degeneration, all that. And so within the different types of propolis that are available, the one that shines is the Brazilian green propolis that is in a tincture. It's very easy to use. Propolis is sticky, and the problem with propolis, if it's too concentrated, you take it, it sticks to the gut wall and you don't absorb it. So BioPure has a product that gets beautifully absorbed in the right dilution or right mix with the alcohol that it's in. The other substance that shines in the literature is the extract of rosemary. It's already in the Bible, rosemary and thyme. And rosemary is a phenomenal healing agent for radiation-induced damage. Most published is the effect on gamma radiation, radioactive exposures, which we may or may not have. We do feel here on the west coast of England, the west coast of America. All the west coasts are exposed now to stuff coming from Fukushima or from other events, and that we need to be protected to some degree from that. That we know rosemary does, but it is a personal finding that we find people tolerate the exposure to cell phone radiation much, much more profoundly and better when they take daily doses of rosemary. So it seems to have a universal radioprotective effect. There is some papers that are pointing that way, but I can clearly confirm that with very practical experience. You give rosemary tincture to an autistic child that is exposed to the cell phone tower 100 yards away. Within a few nights, the child will start sleeping better. So these are two things we recommend for everybody, the underwear and those two tinctures for the radioprotective effect. There's one more tool that BioPure has now that's developed from a physicist in Hungary. It's simply called the GeoCube. Looks like this, like a friendly looking box. You switch it on and you place it in your bedroom, roughly on the same height where you're sleeping. And it works sort of like a black hole. It swallows the adverse electromagnetic radiation. without actually putting anything out. If you try to measure on the outside of the instrument, you won't have any instrument that can measure anything that it gives off, because it doesn't. It works like a black hole. It's designed by a nuclear physicist. There's real physics in there. It's not one of those bullshit things. It has a crystal in it, and you know, you have to believe in it to work. It's pretty much consistent that people, when they put that in the bedroom, start sleeping better right away. So these are a couple of tools that we recommend. I like to maybe shift the focus a little bit on some other things. Now, one is when people have been chronically ill, one of the main effects they're left with is they start looking unwell or prematurely aged. And so BioPure has a number of products, you know, sort of that are antidoting that. But I want to kind of get right away to the strongest products. You know, for the facial rejuvenation, there's nothing else that works as well as a hyaluronic acid. You know, hyaluronic acid, you put it in the hand, you wash your face with it. Just a pipette full is enough, twice a day, and the turgor in your skin increases. Your skin starts looking younger very, very quickly within a few days. Your face looks fuller. The wrinkles disappear because the skin accumulates more moisture from the inside, and the cells restore themselves. You can also use it on the scalp, and you can use it internally. And this has been an unbelievable tool. It's usually an average 160-pound person. It's 3 to 4 of these pipettes twice a day. That's all you need. It absorbs sublingually within 30 seconds. It's the perfect molecule size of the hyaluronic acid that slips right through the mucous membrane into the bloodstream. And many patients have reported within 3-4 days their pain levels, joint-related pains, fibromyalgia-related pain goes down 80% or completely. So it's a huge tool. And then I like to say here, so we use it for beauty, we use it for joint pain, but we also use it for one major other reason, is that many of the modern microbes, pathogens that cause chronic illness, love hyaluronic acid. It's like whipped cream for Klinghardt. This is their primary delicacy for many of the microbes. That's why they are in the joints. That's why they're eating up your discs, and you rupture, you herniate your disc. You think it was the lifting something, but it was really, you had microbes at work there for 20 years before the disc ruptured. The teeth go, the jawbone goes, the eyes go when you don't have enough hyaluronic acid because they're eating it. And so by giving it sublingually, we're giving it as bait. We can bait the microbes to come out of the eyes, out of the eyeball. They come out of the brain, they come out of the joints. And all of these organs improve just by giving this. And now you have the microbes in the blood, where they're the easiest to kill off. Yeah? The microbes are not that smart. They're just like us, they're addicts. They come out for the food, even if it kills them. And so we do this as a primary treatment for the chronic infections, 4 pipettes twice a day of the hyaluronic acid. And we always combine it with the cistus tea. There was a wonderful German study by a university looking at the biofilm problem. You know, we know that the microbes in us don't just swim around in our tissue randomly. They live in highly organized communities made up the strands of mucopolysaccharides, and they're in there, and these are light-conducting materials where they actually, the fiber optic communication systems, where the bugs live in there, very highly protected. And when we get to the next section of how to deal with the modern infections and parasite infestations, we need to know how to break the biofilm. Yeah? And the main biofilm breaking strategy for us is the cistus tea. This is Mediterranean Cistus incanus. It comes both as a tea and as a tincture. And a tincture looks simply like this. And by taking that tea regularly, it softens the biofilm and the microbes are exposed to the antimicrobial agents that we give. That has allowed us to work with herbs very, very successfully in the context of Lyme disease by first softening and breaking the biofilm. All the metal chelating agents are wonderful in addition to that. I prefer DMPS, other people prefer DMSA, and most commonly used is EDTA. They're all good. They're breaking the metal bridges in biofilm apart and makes the biofilm more vulnerable. So I use the cistus, both the tincture and the tea. The tea people have to drink 4 cups a day for life. It's been a huge improvement in the outcome that we have. Cistus also has an antiviral effect. A dog study shows when 2 dogs were released into the forest, that for each 100 ticks one dog comes back with, the one that has had some cistus in his tea comes back with 2. Yeah, that's 1/50th of the tick infestation. So we use it as a prophylactic item when kids go to camp, when we go hiking in the forest. You know, but we simply now make this a lifestyle that people should drink a mix of horsetail tea and cistus tea. You know, the horsetail tea for the aluminum, the chemtrail-related aluminum fallout, and the cistus for the microbes that like to spread in us and to undo the biofilm as a first step in treating chronic infection. So there's a lot more to say on this, but I like to leave that part here. There's a couple of other things I like to, in this talk, like to put in. The other thing for beauty that we use is the bee venom ointment. Yeah, bee venom has been the latest discovery in the beauty industry. Bee venom has a phenomenal effect in facial rejuvenation or skin rejuvenation. And so it's simply applying a small amount of bee venom ointment to the face, to the front of the neck, to the back of the hands, wherever you feel you're aging prematurely. You put the bee venom ointment. It has a phenomenal effect in restoring health and beauty to a tissue. So we like to combine it, to use a hyaluronic acid at one part of the day and the bee venom once or twice a day at another time of the day. And that's a beautiful, beautiful combination. Another thing I like to mention that really doesn't fit anywhere in because it's part of an underlying strategy is to work with the essential oils. Most people benefit from fish oil. Fish oil we use largely to lower triglycerides, but we know that when children get fish oil, it improves their intelligence outcome as they're developing. I don't want to go into, prevents heart attacks. It's just for the aging brain. Fish oil is the antidote for it. However, there is an equal amount of literature that suggests that fish oil is not good for everybody the same way. There are some people that do better with flax oil or borage oil. Some people do better with other sources of omega-3 oils. And of course, we use my diagnostic technique to evaluate that. But what everybody does well with is the astaxanthin. Astaxanthin is really an extract of fish oil, either from krill or other sources. There's also vegetarian sources of astaxanthin from underwater plants in the ocean. Astaxanthin is a plant-based antioxidant that is highly concentrated in fish oil. And by extracting that, it basically has, I like to simplify a little bit about it, all the healing properties that have ever been attributed to fish oil are concentrated in the astaxanthin without the side effects and cross reactions that some people have to the fish oil. So people that are not compatible with fish oil will be compatible with astaxanthin. And the full dose for optimum brain functioning, to have the radical, good, explosive brain and treat hyperactivity in children, learning disorders, autism or so. We go up to 6 a day, 3 capsules twice a day. They're very easy to use. They're small, even children can swallow that. So I know friends of mine on the internet have promoted their astaxanthin very heavily. This one comes from a family-owned outfit here in northern Washington that go fishing in Alaska and actually have access to the very cleanest sources of it. It's an environmental, very, very conscious outfit that is the source of where this comes from. It's not the commercial astaxanthin that you get elsewhere. It's a really special preparation. The same is true for the fish oil. Yeah, this comes from a family-owned business. It's a special type of sockeye salmon that's used as a source for this that is absolutely clean. It's not high up in the food chain salmon. It's a vegetarian type of salmon that feeds on plants and therefore doesn't bioconcentrate mercury and other things in it. And so most of the fish oils that you will find in the health food stores are solvent extracts of mediocre fish oils, and they have to solvent extract it because the source of it is full of mercury and lead and other things. This is not this fish oil. This is pure as nature makes it. It is metal-free, but because of the clean environment that the fish lives in. This is not farm-raised fish. You know, this is wild sockeye salmon, and it has all the vitality of the oils still in it. And then two more products before we get to the infections. BioPure's is a toothpaste, an herbal toothpaste designed by a friend of mine, Dr. Harrison, wonderful dentist who spent 20 years on researching the herbs and how to prepare them to put that in a toothpaste for optimum dental health. It does not have fluoride in it, obviously, and doesn't have any of the other bullshit in it that is in many of even the organic toothpaste. You know, so it's the only toothpaste that I know is completely safe to take. Yes, there is, you know, you can use sodium bicarb and salt, sea salt, you know, and it's nice to alter a little bit, you know, but be aware that toothpaste is an evil thing right now because even the organic toothpaste often contain things that people can be highly affected by. You know, and so this one is currently number one on our list. The last thing before we get to the infections is this one, that's a whole mucuna bean. Mucuna bean, traditionally, it's an Ayurvedic product, is used to treat Parkinson's disease in the early stages. And unfortunately, what we now know is that one of the main injuries to our brain from the electromagnetic radiation, but also from Lyme disease, is the depletion of dopamine production in the frontal lobe of the brain. And so this is our first step of actually symptomatically getting people better. Again, just like the Eclonia cava, it has the pleasant side effect of increasing sexual parameters in both men and women, so it's always been welcomed by both groups to increase the sense of sexual vitality and everything that comes with it. So let me sum up where we are so far. So far we've discussed that I believe everybody should work a lifelong detox program because our environment has become so toxic that because we are in an osmotic balance with the environment, we cannot stay clean, and the genetic mechanisms that we have are not enough anymore to keep us clean against the huge gradient of pressure from the environment in us. So I feel everybody needs to work a lifelong detox program and select some things out of the things that I introduced here. Every one of us is affected by electrosmog. Electrosmog causes DNA strand breaks and destroys many of our metabolic enzymes. And in order to counteract that, we need to have an electromagnetic conscience and electromagnetic hygiene that includes some protective measures that I mentioned, but also some things that we do internally to protect against that. This is where we start all the treatment with my patients in my office, whether I work here in England or over in Seattle, starts with those two, the focus being on those two things. my focus is not on putting people on complex vitamin and hormone programs. You know, the trouble that I have with my colleagues, the reason why we get hormonally depleted and why we're getting nutritionally depleted is because the toxins that we have in us are blocking certain enzymes and metabolic pathways that make everything else not work. And when we give somebody hormones, bioidentical hormones, or we give vitamins in high doses, intravenous, whatever, we're not addressing the underlying cause of it. And I'm all for causal therapy. The causal therapy for all of us is detoxification and electrosmoke protection. And now I will get to the last part of my presentation. When the inner environment has become polluted, the microbes that have lived for 6 million years symbiotically with us become more virulent, more aggressive. They get out of balance with us. You know? An example is if you take a nice little lake that's somewhere down in the woods, and it got nice beautiful fish in it, it's got some beautiful water plants in it that blossom at certain times of the year. Now you go and throw like a handful of toxins in there. You come back a year later, all the fish are gone, the plants that are growing and they look ugly to the eye, there is this algae mass kind of in there, it stinks. The same happens in our body, you know, that the beauty that we once had is no longer there, and we have an overgrowth on the inside of hostile microorganisms, and not just in the gut, but even in the connective tissue and in the brain. And in the last part of my presentation, I get to that, what we do with that. So this next part of my talk is really my favorite section, because I get to talk about parasites. A tiny bit about my background. Over 30 years ago, I was in charge of an infectious disease ward in a hospital in India, and had access to the world's premier, finest parasitologists, and learned a lot about that. And one thing I know for sure, that there isn't a single lab in Europe or in the US that can accurately rule out parasitic illness in people. The detection rate may be as low as 2% in most laboratories and most communities. And so it is, in my experience, the most overlooked cause of symptoms in a chronically ill person. The parasite is usually not the cause of the illness, it's usually the inner pollution, but the parasite moves into the system and develops in the system, in a contaminated system, in different ways than it would in a non-contaminated person. We know from research in biology that parasites extract from the host a vast variety of toxins and concentrate them in their own body. That means a parasite, none of the parasites today are truly parasites. They're symbiotic creatures. They're actually here because we're polluted. And they're actually helping us by extracting some pollutants out of our system so we can live. But at a cost. You know, the parasite will cause huge changes in our psychology, in our emotional body, and physical symptoms. And so making the diagnosis is a huge part. It has to be done either by manual palpation, examination of the body. I got pretty good at being able to differentiate and identify parasites simply by manual palpation, looking for some of the skin signs that goes beyond the talk here. So the first step, the first thing to know about parasites always need to be treated from both ends of the body. There needs to be a rectal approach, and there needs to be an oral approach. So I want to start on the other end first. So my primary tool for treating parasitic illness is to work with suppositories. And my initial sort of gunshot approach is one suppository that contains both an extract of vermouth, of wormwood, called Artemisia annua, and at the same time contains freeze-dried garlic. Garlic is traditionally used as the main antiparasitic throughout the Middle Ages and beyond. And so this product is called Nexus. It's a suppository inserted rectally every night. We like people to start with a 3-week protocol for 20 days or so. Amazing good things happen. And one of the most amazing things is you insert the suppository within 5 minutes. You taste the garlic. That means it has been absorbed and is in your circulation and is at work. I like to just go through the different types of products that are available. The other one that may be a little bit stronger, but we like to not start with that, is called Idalia. That has, in addition to that, has castor oil in it, has clove oil in it, and has walnut oil and essential oils of that. All of the essential oils are ozonated. And when you ozonate an essential oil, it creates hundreds of new antimicrobial compounds that make these things so powerful. So when I say it got, the Nexus got the oil of artemisia in it and the freeze-dried garlic, these are then ozonated. And so it's not just the oil that it's named by, but then these hundreds of other compounds that are being created by ozonating it. So Nexus and Idalia are the two most powerful antiparasitic ones that we use. The other ones I quickly go through. We use Scorpios is the oil that contains EDTA. It's a suppository, there's EDTA in it. We use EDTA as our primary antiparasitic biofilm breaker. It breaks the housing that the parasite causes, that creates around itself to protect itself. EDTA has a huge effect in dismantling the biofilm in which parasites are protecting themselves. So it goes with the parasite treatment. We often insert both at the same time, maybe one Nexus and then chasing it with the Scorpios to get the biofilm breakage right there with it. There's a couple of other ones. There is the green coffee idea. It's called Altairs. Coffee enemas have been used for about 60 years in our medicine. Largely, it got famous as a treatment for cancer-related pain. Where people do like a coffee enema every 2 hours to minimize the cancer-related pain. But it's been shown that by inserting coffee, the other end of the body, it triggers a number of enzymes in the liver, where the liver starts detoxing much, much faster. So it's a way of turning on the detox machinery in the liver. And there's different variations on this. One is called, this product here, Andreas, contains coffee, the green coffee bean, plus freeze-dried garlic. And so the garlic, the idea is this, that you move the coffee into the liver to open up the bile ducts and the production of increased detox activity, and then you put the garlic in there to kill the microscopic microbes that are settling in the bile ducts and the liver, but also the sulfur compounds in the garlic will help to move toxins much more rapidly through the liver. And then the last one in this group is the Alta. Alta is simply ozonated olive oil and ozonated castor oil. The biochemist in Germany who did research on ozonating olive oil and castor oil found out with the proper ozonation, it creates an average of 400 to 600 new phytochemicals by ozonating it. They all are antimicrobial in nature. So the nice thing about the olive and castor oil is that's the one that we can also safely use in pregnant women, and that's really why it's there. Certain of the essential oils are contraindicated in pregnancy for whatever reasons, and whether that's real or not, we don't know, but we don't want to step on the toes of somebody else. And so we use the olive and castor oil. Yeah, the product, again, is called Alta, that has that. So that's on that end of the body. Now let's move to the other end for the parasites. And we have the same or similar products. Alta is the essential oil, ozonated combination of simply olive oil and castor oil. And that's a primary antiparasitic strategy. And the way this is used, a few drops are put, you take a glass with water, fill it half with water, you put the drops in. Usually we start with 2 drops once a day, and the final dose with all of these is 10 drops 3 times a day. That's sort of the target. So you put the drops in the water, and then you pour more water on it, and that the turbulence that's created by that emulsifies the oils and creates a milky fluid that is actually fairly pleasantly tasting. And these oils have a profound effect for all fungal infections, all yeast infections, for all parasites, for Lyme disease, and as you will see in a moment, also for viral infections. It's really the alternative to any other antimicrobial strategy. It's just more effective than anything else that's out there. Werner Steidl is the main pioneer of this work. He was running the Department of Chemistry at the University in Erlangen in Germany. Brilliant, brilliant man who pioneered the whole work around this. I'd just like to highlight a few products with this. One is called Gamma. Gamma is really, when people are not pregnant, is my primary antiparasitic, antifungal of this group. Zeta, these are all named after the Greek alphabet, the ozonated, we call them O3 oils. So the O3 oil named Zeta is the main, is tweaked towards its antiviral effects. It's got oil of cumin in it, which has huge antiviral properties. There's also a lambda, and then there is a 10-in-1. We used to have 10 different ozonated oils, and the 10-in-1, with all different combinations, and the 10-in-1 is taking these 10 different combinations and putting them together in equal amounts. And this is sort of the most wide spectrum antimicrobial oil. Now, the oils can also be used on the skin, and really what they used to be marketed for, I think, by BioPure is simply to put them in the bathtub, or to put them on the skin. I use them internally because that's how they've been used in Germany, and here in England we're certainly safe to use them that way. So, they're now called, the new name of them is simply O3 oils, and they do a wonderful job, and it's my primary antimicrobial strategy, but with the overlapping effect, a strong antiparasitic effect. Now, there is a few extra things we do for parasites. One is a fern extract called Mimosa pudica. The average dose of this is like half a teaspoon twice a day. It is almost a must with almost every chronic ill patient. We have them on Mimosa pudica. That's called the sensitive plant in Hawaii. It's the origin of this, and a phenomenal amount of literature showing the effectiveness and safety of that as an antiparasitic. The other one from a different continent is neem. Neem is from Ayurvedic medicine. The neem tree creates very, very strong antimicrobial compounds, are used in shampoos commercially now in the US. I've seen in England, I've seen many shampoos that have neem as part, because it makes the hair nice and shiny, but it also kills lice and fleas and microbes that are involved. Neem is a traditional antiparasitic remedy. What BioPure is using is an extract that uses different parts of the plant, including the flower, so it's a more highbrow product that's very, very, it gives it a delicate quality that also often treats the emotional aspect of the person infested with parasites. The I like to use this for like a shorter period of time, 3 to 6 weeks. And the dose in an average adult is two capsules 3 times a day. It's a very, very powerful antimicrobial strategy. I use it largely in the context of parasitic disease. A new product on the block is fig extract. You know, there is in the peel of the fig is a substance called phycin, which has been shown in the literature to be tremendously effective against many parasites. But also it is a huge hormone balancer. It also creates just an inherent sense of well-being and harmony in the body. So it's a strange product. When you take this powder of the fig extract, it tastes good. It tastes like a sweet, like something like you're spoiling yourself. And you have no idea that you're actually taking a potent antiparasitic and a potent precursor or potent modulator of all your hormones. You know, so this, before we do bioidentical hormones, everybody gets 2 teaspoons of this a day, you know, 1 teaspoon twice a day, heaping teaspoon, with multiple beneficial effects that go across the spectrum of the causes of modern illness. The last one of the antiparasitics that we that are using in our daily work is chaga. Chaga, just very briefly, is the outgrowth of birch trees. It's a fungus that grows on birch trees, but only in highly northern climates. And the original literature on this are hieroglyphs found in Siberia 5,000 years ago. They were using this as their primary life-extending, health-inducing strategy. I got onto this in the 1980s by reading a book from the Nobel Prize laureate Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who mentioned the shamans in Siberia healing everything with this. And then we tried to source chaga, and we found many outlets in the US and Europe selling chaga, and none of them worked. And then we went to Siberia through our contacts and found the original Siberian chaga, and it's a phenomenal product. This is prepared as a freeze-dried powder that's prepared by taking half a teaspoon in hot water, and is prepared just like coffee. Ideally, it is to add some creamer to it, like 100% whipped cream, organic, or cream made from coconut, to give it a liposomal uptake effect. You know, by doing it that way, you get much deeper penetration into the system. And it's wonderful to add a little bit of honey to it when the drink has cooled down a little bit for absolute 100% absorption. And some of the people are culinarily more inclined than I am, can make it taste just like good coffee. You know? So people refer to in the literature as chaga tea, but I would prefer to call it chaga coffee, because with whipped cream and honey, it tastes just like coffee to me. It's a wonderful drink, gives a huge amount of energy. People have to watch out if it interferes with the sleep at night. They're taking it too late or too much of it. You know, so that's the one thing. A wonderful treatment for all of the Lyme disease-related infections, all the co-infections. Wonderful treatment for all the parasites that we know. It's used for children that are not thriving, so we use it for the autistic children with wonderful improvements that we see. We had people dramatically increase their white blood count. People have chronically low white blood counts in Lyme disease. It comes up almost predictably, very, very quickly within a few weeks. So it's a wonderful product. And last in this section, what I like to say, whenever we do things that kill microbes in the gut, we want to make sure we replenish the normal bowel flora. And BioPure has a product that I like a lot. It's called Probavi. This contains, to a large degree, prebiotics. That means the type of food that encourages the growth of our healthy microbes versus the pathogens. And I like to say something about probiotics that I think is largely misunderstood. In other parts of the world, when we give probiotics, they have to be in stomach acid resistant capsules, so the probiotics survive the traveling through the stomach, and on the other end the capsule dissolves and then the healthy bacteria are spelled out. Here in the US, we give probiotics, in regular capsules. We know that none of the microbes arrive alive on the other end of the stomach. And still it's a huge industry that is claiming all these huge results that I, in my practice, never see. There is an immune reset that happens when I give dead bugs, dead healthy bugs to the system, like what we do here. And it resets the immune system in the gut to a degree that it can be health-inducing to a degree. But it is wonderful when you can actually bring healthy, alive microbes to the small intestine and to the large intestine. And the strategy that works the best is by giving prebiotics. There's always enough of our own bugs that are still surviving there, even in chronic illness, and we want to foster their growth. So the exact bugs that you already have get nurtured, and that's best done with a prebiotic. And so we use the Probavi in fairly high amounts. A teaspoon 3 times a day would not be too much. It does have some healthy bacteria in it, but the main effect of this is the wonderful prebiotics that it comes with. It is food selectively that can only be used by the healthy microbes in our gut, not by the pathogens, and it self-selects the growth of the healthy bugs. So I think I leave that here. That was sort of my parasite section. There's other things we do with the parasites. We use enemas, we use the Gubarev protocols, Russian protocols to release parasites from the system. We use colon hydrotherapy. I cannot say here, how important this part of treatment of chronic illness is. We all have parasites now because of the environmental changes and the inner pollution. We have to have them to survive. And yet, we're better off with getting rid of them periodically. And the body will regrow the new ones if we need them to extract toxins from us. They will keep regrowing. But with every parasite that's released in the poop, our health improves. And we've seen the largest steps forward in health by addressing the parasites. Not by giving somebody high doses of vitamin C, or alpha-lipoic acid or whatever it is. We see it by doing this. There will be one more part to our presentation that will be the more narrow focus on Lyme disease and the co-infections. Good, and then I have a few extra things, and then we leave it there. One is a German product called Rechtsregulat. This is a product, I tell you how it's created, and then I tell you how we're using it. They take grains and vegetables and ferment them, just like you would ferment wine or any of the fermented drinks. And then every couple of weeks, they pour off a certain portion of the fluids that are created, and then keep fermenting it on. And again, a few weeks later, pour off a little bit more. This is called cascade fermentation, and each one of these poured off fluids contains a different set of enzymes. And this is done over 7 years. And so the end product is this. It tastes just like a vinegar. It has a huge blood thinning effect, and the chronically infected patient has thick blood and clotting of the blood, and you can't get with your medicine to where the bugs are because the terminal stream bed of the capillaries are plugged up with the thick blood, and so this thins the blood beautifully, and we can get the delivery of all our medication to the terminal stream bed. It's fantastic to use on the skin. A lot of our chronically ill patients have skin things, scabs on the scalp, skin rashes, psoriasis or so. And so my primary use recently of this was to use tiny amounts of it just on the skin, rubbing it in the places that are itchy, that are infected, that are red, that are scabbing over. A great treatment for older males at my age that have these scabs on the scalp, that kind of look ugly. You get bald, that's one problem already, but then you get all these red spots and scales on top of it. This takes care of it beautifully. So that's it. And then there is just a tiny bit more to say. There is a recent development that really has to do with the anti-aging aspects. You know, when people have been ill for a long time, you know, we want to help them with the beauty of their face. I mentioned that with the hyaluronic acid. But on the inside, you know, the hormones are always off in a Lyme patient. And the difficulty with that is if you substitute the hormones, it also drives the growth of the spirochetes. And so the bioidentical hormone therapy can become a nightmare with a Lyme patient. And so BioPure has designed like some simple products. One is called female biosupport and the other one is called male biosupport. And we just let that run alongside with the treatment to optimize the hormones in a way that it doesn't create any side effects. You know, I give you an example. You know, in the Lyme patient, typically in a woman, the brain gets depleted of progesterone receptors. That means the brain needs stimulation from progesterone, but has very little receptors. But the breast of the woman has too many of them. Now, if you do a blood test that shows, yes, you have too little progesterone, but the moment you give it, the breast grows to uncomfortable levels and also dangerous levels, but the brain feels great. So you feel great in terms of your depression lifting and all that. You stop being bitchy, your husband loves you, but the breasts grow and you get scared. You know? And you can't really find a healthy middle ground. And for that, we use the female biosupport to regulate the whole system so it self-regulates. Same with the male biosupport. And then the last two things, one is called Cardiac K. Cardiac K is the BioPure's solution to the vitamin D problem. It's very well known now that most Western population has low vitamin D levels, predicting all sorts of degenerative diseases. There's a problem with vitamin D that the Lyme spirochetes also have a vitamin D receptor, so the more vitamin D you get, the more alive the Lyme disease becomes. But if you don't have vitamin D, you get cancer. All the cancer across the board pretty much, and neurological disease like MS, ALS and so forth. And so the solution really that we are very clear about is you need all the vitamin D that you can get, but you have to treat the Lyme disease at the same time. That's the solution. It's not one or the other. And so the problem with vitamin D is if you give vitamin D, you mobilize calcium and you can calcify the blood vessels. Your brain does great, your immune system is great, but you get calcified. And the antidote for that is vitamin K, and it has to be given in a certain proportion to the vitamin D. And that's the Cardiac K. You know, the Cardiac K, one capsule has 1,000 units of vitamin D3 in it, and the right proportion of the different vitamin Ks. And so, on average, you know, we test people out, but there's, you know, the minimum somebody would need in the winter months is like 2 capsules a day, but you know, some people need a lot more to balance the vitamin D level. We do measure that in the blood. The vitamin D3 level, you know, should be around 60, and so we see whatever is needed to get there. And the last product is Cardia N. Cardia N is simply a group of plant adaptogens. They're very, very similar to the ones in the deep purple and the rosehip. And so if people prefer to do the quick capsule thing, you know, somebody who's fast-lived, like a fast-lived executive who can't be bothered to make a smoothie in the morning, you know, and to stir things, powders in the thing and wait until they dissolve and drink it, the Cardia N is the alternative to that. You know, it's not better, it's just encapsulated. And I think that's all I want to say. I like to say a few finishing words. So we're, you know, today we're here in England, and it's rainy, just like at home in Seattle. And the information I'm giving here, I am not financially linked to BioPure, even though it may look to everybody obvious that I am, but I'm actually not linked financially to the company. It's just friends of mine are running the company. I'm helping them out. And they're the ones that actually followed my impulse to create products that are purely biological, purely plant-sourced, They're not tinkered with by a pharmaceutical company that extracts or tweaks the products. All these products are done in a way that God made them. They're just kind of selected carefully from all over the planet. The BioPure does wonderful quality control, with the chromatography to check on the plant ingredients to see is it really the plant that we're getting. And biological products will always change slightly in their strength, the constituents that are in there, so it's going to be alive. It's not like a pharmaceutical product that has the exact same milligrams of something in it. It's going to fluctuate to a degree with the seasons and everything, and it's a wonderful alive medicine. And I can truly say that we've helped a huge number of people with these ideas and these products to regain their health and to not be dependent on a prescription pad and not be dependent on the knowledge of a single practitioner. People can source their own products, they can inform themselves, they can learn about their illnesses. And I know BioPure has a retail outlet also where people can buy their own products and just simply start exploring their illnesses in safe ways by using these products. And I think I like to leave it there. Thanks for listening to me.